Hey everybody. I want to tell you right now, we are about to have an amazing show. I've got a jam-packed episode with a 20-year practitioner of artificial intelligence. I'll tell you now, November in 2022, OpenAI released an incredible chatbot, but Eliza was the very first, released in 1966. So there's some historical context that we want to bring to the table. But ultimately, our goal today is to help marketing leaders harness the power of predictive analytics. And without further ado, let us bring on Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer of the Turing Forge and founder of the Global Institute of Data Science, John Foxworthy.
Hello.
Hey,
thank
John.
you. Thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. I can't wait to introduce the audience not only to your storied history, but kind of your mission. So let's just kick it off right at the top. I mentioned at the very beginning, we're talking about the Global Institute of Data Science. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. So the Global Institute of Data Science is basically a career development and professional development organization. It focuses on three areas for consulting, coaching, and also our long-term mission is certification. So the coaching is a mentoring service for executives and also for group training to develop artificial intelligence products or machine learning products, whether they're technical or not technical. And then the consulting is for B2B relationships for companies that have been doing machine learning and they want to develop an additional product or service. And then the certification is our long-term goal, which would be our certified data science professional, and to do that with the American National Standards Institute in the U.S., equivalent to like a CPA or CFA type of thing, which is our long-term goal.
Extraordinary. I mean, just really exciting. So John, I found you out in the wilderness. I'm looking for a chief artificial intelligence officer. I have this grandiose vision, right? Autonomous operations. How do I enable every single department to harness a certain specific set of capabilities? One of them being advanced analytics, the other being generative AI, robotic process automation. How do we turn Pareto's principle upside down? Pareto, excuse me, which is can we take 80% of tasks that are only generating 20% of the results and automate them so that we have more time for the 20% of tasks that are generating 80% of the results? So one of the things that drew me to you right away is that you're a 20-year practitioner in the field. Like you put the rubber to the road. It's not just GPT forward. So talk to me a little bit about kind of the wars that you've battled over the 20 years that you've been in. Give me a little bit of background.
Sure. The background was about 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, when I was at UCLA studying econometric modeling. I wanted to know how the currency markets worked. So it's something that was amorphous, large, decentralized, and I couldn't quite understand how these types of exchanges between one currency to the next across dozens of countries, yet they all agree on some value, and how did that actually work? And that drove me into econometrics, and that econometrics modeling drove me into becoming a staff statistician when I came out of the university. And from there, that's when I learned the early stages of data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. The labels were different back then. I eventually acquired the title of data science scientist later. But that was really my journey. I also studied the history of it as well in terms of how it actually came about. Data science as a term really came out in 2001. It was really the amalgamation of various disciplines using the statistical equations, but for a variety of reasons across various sectors. So it's kind of like the superset of all the work that I did before. And then machine learning, when I started doing working on machine learning, we simply just called it statistics or statistical learning. So that's what was the original earlier forms of machine learning and statistics. And as I kind of moved from one company to the next, I had to do a lot of training and mentoring to discuss certain topics with large legal firms, large insurance companies, big banks, global retail brands, all of which more or less had the same problems they had within their own data sets. What is their data? Is it this data clean? What does the data tell about their organization? How is it tied to the revenue? How is it not? Is there a way to minimize costs within their data structures that they have, things of that sort.
Absolutely. Great, great. And so, in going down this pathway that we're going today, we're going to be talking about what is honestly the most popular implementation in all of generative AI. We'll call it advanced technologies for now, which is in marketing and sales. So McKinsey, shout out to McKinsey and Company, 34% of respondents in their 2024 State of AI said that marketing and sales is the implementation model that many of the companies are going with. They're the department that seems to be leading the charge. And I thought that was apropos, given that our topic. And, there are some subsegments to that, content support and personalized marketing. So I want to start with our very first question for you. And it's, how can predictive analytics help marketing leaders anticipate customer needs and behavior more effectively than traditional methods?
Sure. Very a great question. So, traditional methods focus on current value and periodic reports and basically intuition. And what predictive analytics does is it introduces a data-driven process to project future purchase patterns, identify factors that increase loyalty. So in other words, this is a road where you're getting into CLV, the customer lifetime value calculation, and its projection. After that, there would be, in terms of predictive analytics, there's exploratory data analysis of your customers, descriptive analytics of unsupervised learning to kind of generate a set of questions, a very important question, such as, is your customer willing to pay more? And what type of customer is that within your customer base? After that, I'd say there's a lot more involved here because it does vary from company to company and product line, and that is testing, such as A/B testing, optimization, pattern recognition, but it varies from company and product lines.
Perfect, perfect. And so let's talk about the rubber meeting the road. And so as a former product marketing manager, oftentimes, especially in my career, I was hired on to launch a different, fork in the road, right? So maybe it's a locally installed estimating and quantity takeoff solution in construction, and we're launching our first cloud application that's going to be integrating a mobile application into a cloud environment. And ultimately, as a product marketing manager, we're focused on buyer personas. We're focused on trying to anticipate what the market needs. How do you leverage artificial intelligence, or how would I have a decade ago, to help me be more effective in leading that product launch?
Yeah, that's important. Let me take a step back here and say one thing about that. It's great to do kind of have a shiny object syndrome with generative AI or some other type of agentic AI, but you want to take in your current data sets and see if there's any cognitive biases that you have, which might cause you to lead you to go in a certain direction that you don't need to. So there's a psychological component, because data science and machine learning is basically interdisciplinary. It has a psychological component, linguistics, such as ChatGPT, and then also the engineering part and the computer science part and statistics. So you want to kind of take a look at intuition-based marketing and data-driven marketing as a Venn diagram. And you want to be in the middle of that Venn diagram where your intuition has been validated through machine learning processes. That is your ultimate goal. If you don't have that, then you have a potential bias about your products or a bias about your customers or the industry that you're in. There is that. On top of that, you kind of want to focus on first developing your data sets first, understanding your customers as much as possible with the data sets that you have, and then to focus on particular quick wins that you can have with your customers with predictive analytics on whether or not they'll buy the product or not, who is the customer demographic of that, those sets of questions. But ultimately, I always try to, I'd have to say most of my advice is slow down. Because there is a lot of news out there that is quite influential in marketing campaigns out there for artificial intelligence. And as a real practitioner who's been doing this for 20 years, I kind of feel like the high school coach to slow people down, or like the dad in the kindergarten classroom to kind of slow things down, because it's very easy to become overly excited about artificial intelligence. Very much so.
Absolutely. And I mean, we can see that, I mean, in the adoption rates. I mean, over the last, let's call it 7 years, we're seeing an explosion in the adoption of AI. Now, generative AI comes on the scene, as we can see, as in a small blue line in the 2023, 2022 era. But artificial intelligence, as you're describing it, because we're using terms colloquially, right? We're interchanging machine learning and data science and all of these things. But there's this long storied history. But let's stay at
Yeah.
machine learning. For many who don't know, machine learning is how Facebook knows when to deliver you an ad immediately for what you want. And so let's talk a little bit about the role that machine learning plays in marketing. So the question I have is, what role does machine learning play in enhancing the accuracy and relevancy of predictive analytics in marketing?
Well, I would first say that it's been involved in marketing a lot longer than people think it is. It has a long history, probably going back to 1970s, potentially to 1960s, with linear regression models with very large companies who are dominant within their industrial sectors, such as automobiles, planes, large retail products, supermarket chains, who did do linear regression models and logistic regression models, machine learning models, essentially we call them today. Back then, this is before the internet. This is also television ads and also print ads. So that type of information, that type of modeling has existed. In today's area, how predictive analytics can really impact your business, particularly within marketing, it's going to be within, if you have a data set that is helpful for you, to be able to actually pinpoint which customer segment is willing to pay more and why, which customer segment is willing to be interested in an additional product line of yours, and more information about your customer who's willing to spend more money on your products and services. That's really the key within return on your investment and also predictive analytics with machine learning. Now, there's a lot more there as well. There are the aspects of getting an unexpected answer that people who spend the least within your customer segment that you have, it was willing to spend much more, probably for a lot of different external reasons, such as geographic differences, or maybe there's not enough stores or physical stores in your area. So it's important to keep a very open mind with predictive analytics, just as I go back earlier with the Venn diagram between intuition-based marketing versus data-driven marketing. You want to stay in the little middle there, and also adjust your biases as you use more predictive analytics in your marketing.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's talk a little bit. Let's take a step back. One of the things that happens when practitioners of any field, I don't care what it is, you can be in finance, you get to talking financial terms and assume everybody understands them. Same thing with artificial intelligence, any technological concept. So let's start at data science. I feel like that's really the core of enabling anything that you're about to say and anything you have said to actually happen in a company. So talk a little bit and help the audience understand, if I'm a CMO and I need to engage in predictive analytics or implementing that, why is data science something I need to understand, at least at a foundational level, or reach out to somebody like yourself?
Sure. So data is basically digital information, and that digital information is about your customers. And I'll even open this up to manufacturers if you have multiple suppliers for your manufacturing process. But for customers in particular, that information may lead you to potential innovation and also potential marketing campaigns who people are willing to spend more or actually have more interest in your products and services than they normally do not. Let me give you a good example of this. Let's say you're currently have a business that's retail based in, let's say, 10 cities across the US, but there's a whole set of cities that you're not in at all. If you are a CMO, you're thinking to yourself, how can I go to the 11th city, the 12th city, or the 13th city? Well, one way you can do is you take your existing customer database within those 10 cities, and then you can replicate what it would be like if you were in the 11th and the 12th cities to see your potential return on your investment and the potential costs that are involved. You can use this with data generation, synthetic data, and you can do generative artificial intelligence to kind of replicate the scenario rather than going blindly through intuition and saying, well, we know this city, this is what it's like. So what predictive analytics can do, what artificial intelligence can do, and actually give you more color on what your potential future scenarios can be, which will is also helpful for planning for your organization, and also what potential new products you can actually potentially produce from these new cities that you may enter into.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so we're at data science, so we've got that. But before we get to data science, there's that foundational piece, data governance. It's a hot topic. Everybody's talking about it. Let's get to the data governance side of things. So we know we have to start at data. Everything begins there. Talk to me a bit about data governance. I'm a leader. I'm CEO. I'm a chief sales officer. All of us have the charter of driving revenues through our data. So let's talk a little bit about data governance. What are some of the ways that a non-practitioner should understand, be asking questions around data governance to their internal teams?
So data governance is basically the people, the processes, and technology that's involved with valuing the data assets of an organization. It is both a soft subject and a hard subject at the same time. It is also the number one reason why most customers will be outcompeted from their competitors who've adopted artificial intelligence, but you haven't ready because your house is not cleaned up, and namely your data assets. So data governance, its number one priority is data quality. The definition of data quality is usefulness. When you practice data governance, it's basically data management. So companies who have their data governed, curated, and ready, they can launch several machine learning products and services as much as they can, compared to other organizations who are not governed with their own data. And that's a critical role that exists within machine learning. It's the upfront work that's involved where you want to proceed with machine learning and artificial intelligence. It is common also at the same time that certain companies who have a lot of data silos have one or two data silos who are firing machine learning and are able to produce those services within their company. But they still are slowly working on data governance. But the organizations that do this the best is if they have an enterprise-wide data management solution, from accounting to engineering to marketing to sales, etc. And that's very critical to have all of them all working together as a well-oiled machine when you deploy machine learning products and services against your competitors and also for your customers.
Beautiful. And so let's go back to McKinsey's study. And one of the things that we see is there's a significant drop off. If 34% of the customers that responded said marketing and sales is the implementation, so roughly 3 out of every 10, almost 4 out of every 10, 35%. What happens is that as we can see it, function number one, let's call it marketing, 72%. We've got a function, we're going to deploy AI. We go to sales. 50% of the organization said, yeah, we've done marketing and sales, two completely different functions. They attract revenue two different ways. There is a significant drop off when you go to a third function. So when you talked about product development, you talked about engineering and accounting, there are very few organizations that are responding saying, hey, we've got it in marketing and sales and product management and product innovation and accounting and business operations. Now you're getting around 5%. Can you talk a little bit about why there's a hesitancy, or what are some of the barriers that you have seen that lead to such a significant drop off across implemented functions?
Yeah, this largely has to do with the industrial organization of the company. It also has to do with people's skill sets and backgrounds. You know, as somebody who came into this field purely in statistics, it was super easy for me to get into data science because the equations that we used were 100% identical. So there's no, even when the universities I teach at, if I know that there's one or two students that has a bachelor's degree in econometrics or statistics, I know they're going to be getting the highest grade in the class. And it's happened over and over and over again. And why this is important, because if you have people who do not have that background in statistics, let's say they've studied computer science or applied math or engineering, and they're trying to develop a product and they're working in a software development group, That's really a lateral difference between the two. A good example of this would be the following. Novelists read novels to produce more novels, but journalists also read novels, not to produce more novels, but to actually become a better writer. So essentially, you have two professions who are sharing the same resource, and one of them is better than the other. Now, there's going to be a small set of journalists who are going to write a novel that's going to be outstanding, one of the best in the world, let's say. But that's like 1 or 2% of all the journalists. So by way of analogy, what's happening here, you could also think in terms of software engineers and machine learning engineers. So both of them have the same, they share the same resource. Let's say it's Python programming, but their objectives are very different. Their training and what they did before was completely different. And as a result, one's going to be doing better than the other. And this is really a matter of how people are confusing two different professions who are using the same resource. And that's why it's causing this kind of lack of results on that graph there, where they're not able to produce those, particularly people who are technical. I would say within that graph, I would not be surprised that people are using a relatively low cost or free product, let's say ChatGPT, to ask a bunch of marketing questions. And therefore, they're able to come up with some answers, and therefore they're able to implement. And that's why those numbers are posted up there. So right now we have a lot of people who are not within that marketing or sales, or let's say they're in accounting or engineering or some other type of field, where for them, they don't really have the skill set or the wheelhouse to develop this particular product. And that might probably what represents this line graph.
Okay. And that leads us into our next question for you, and really want to understand. Let's get some more rubber to the road and make sure the audience understands. Can you share some specific examples or maybe a case study where predictive analytics has improved resource allocation or ROI in a marketing campaign specifically?
Sure, I'll deal with ROI, return on investment, because it's one of my favorites. I would say there's. So years ago, we had a national retailer with the following data, which was like purchasing history that goes back about 3 years. We had data on the loyalty program data, website browsing patterns, email engagement metrics. Did they respond to the email or not? Did they click on it, for example? Seasonal sales trends, and then also geographic location data across the United States. So quite a bit of amount of data. And from this, we did data analysis and some unsupervised learning techniques to generate a set of questions about these customers. And then we moved on into supervised learning, which is basically predictive analytics. And the team that I work with in particular, we built individual customers that basically, whether or not they purchase a product in terms of the likelihood, we gave them product affinity scores. They're involved, and also price sensitivity thresholds. And then we also calculated optimal send times per customer. So these are all very technical things involved with the customer base based on our data sets. And ultimately, we're able to cut into particular customer segments who were able to spend some more money. And we segmented these customers into personas across the US. And that allows us to reallocate the budgets across the various channels across the US for predicted return on the investment. So it was a big heavy lift in terms of the data with purchase history and loyalty programs and email engagement metrics. But the critical thing here with the predictive analytics is a concept called feature engineering. So essentially, it's instead of just accepting the data that's just given to you, no matter how big it is, can you take that data and not change its values, but basically express it in a different way, where it's meaningful for you for your predictive analytics, of where you can do affinity scores in particular, and also price sensitivity thresholds to learn more about the customer. And that's really a key to return on investment that from my past experience I had with a national retailer.
Very nice, very nice. And we see that in the data. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing here is that there's a significant drop off as you scale across the business. And it seems like one, because of the success factor, right? So in marketing, you successfully implement technology and that allows you to identify a profitable customer segment, there's an immediate return on investment. It seems like ROI is a very significant factor in where AI resources or where AI use cases are deployed. We see that even in the 34% of respondents, 16% of them had content support in their marketing strategy, and others had personalized messaging and marketing. Can we talk a little bit about how data science helps companies deliver more personalized message? But let's be clear here. We're not talking about little tokens inside of a pre-built template, right? It's, oh, you work at this company and you have this title. That's not personalization. That was personalization 1.0 before everybody got access to it. We need a much more personalized experience in order to really cut through the market. So how do you, as a practitioner, lead organizations to develop deeper capabilities to personalize the marketing experience?
Yeah, there's definitely more personalization algorithms that exist out there, and that will definitely continue along with real-time data as well. With personalized recommendations, you have to have the correct data set to identify personal choices that your customer has. What is the story that you can tell from the data? In other words, provide a storytelling mechanism within your data sets to identify that this is actually a personalized choice within that particular customer. And then on top of that, to superset that along and roll that up into personas for a variety of customers who have the same behavior. Now, there's a couple of ways to do personalization exist within customer marketing. There is the traditional way through intuition, such as going into a store. I'll give you a real life example first, then I'll get into a more machine learning based approach. For example, I went into a store last month to get some blue jeans. The store clerk knew me pretty well, so then they personalized a recommendation to have this jacket along with these blue jeans that we're buying. So that's one way of doing a real traditional based, intuition based way of marketing and doing personal recommendations. On top of that, to do this on a scale and also in a digital way, you have to identify the key factors and features that are personalized recommendations for each customer and their personas. There's a couple ways of doing this. The newer way that's getting a bit more approach is to remove all your biases that exist and to use reinforcement learning mechanisms, namely recommendation engines, that's one of them, or more complicated, version of recommendation engines, which are something called generically personalization algorithms, which basically learn on which personalized recommendation works and doesn't work. And through this trial and error process, analytically speaking, through machine learning, it eventually gets better from each personalization over time. So after a year, when the customers continue to buy, you have basically a fine-tuned approach with your personalization mechanisms with your customer base.
Perfect. Beautiful. Thank you. And so let's talk a little bit about the leaders themselves. One of the interesting things in this study that we're reading is that typically your senior managers, your senior leaders, so mid-level, senior, and C-level executives, around 40% of them have not at least tried AI at all. And that's kind of shocking here, given the explosion. But really, when we're talking about regular use, we're seeing a very small percentage, about 15% across the board. For mid-level managers, it's a significant drop off. There's also a fear factor, right? Embracing this technology could lead to significant reductions in force. We saw it at the very beginning of the explosion. Let's talk a bit about the positive of leveraging machine learning, data science in an organization to create opportunities, economic opportunities for people. The companies that do these technologies well typically have the most employees. They create the most economic value. Why is that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Companies that are larger tend to have also larger data sets. They've also tried a lot more things in terms of volume and scale versus smaller companies. In addition, they probably have had some experience with data governance. Most small companies don't overlook data governance for quite a amount of time before it actually becomes an issue to them. But for larger companies, there's also this with data governance. The clients, their clients or their partners want to know that the data is clean and curated because they have a business relationship. So it's very important for them from that to be incentivized to have a data governance background. I would also say that, if of the companies that have data governance and the senior managers are kind of getting into this, it could be they're reacting to certain things in the news where they're trying to try something. They see a news article, and that's why you get that rate of number of senior managers who are doing this type of work. On top of that, I would also say that if you broke it down by industry, I think that number might actually be a bit more complicated. So I think this study is very much top down. It is one single sample. There's that. Just kind of bring my statistics hats on top of it. So I wouldn't read too much into it. But here, okay. So we have this. Let's see, technology, energy, and materials. Okay.
So they're about 20. So what we're seeing is that this is the share of budget on analytical AI technology, right? The core of this discussion. And what we see is the leaders are typically tech, of course, healthcare, and consumer goods and retail, where there's a lot of an end customer. Typically, when we talk tech, we're talking consumer tech versus business tech. It seems like there are certain industries that invest very heavily in that, and they likely have developed core competencies. So I'll follow that up with a question and talk about what are some of the key challenges that organizations face when they're implementing predictive analytics, because it seems the budget share, shrinks as you go down the line, but overall, there are some challenges, and how do they overcome them? That's going to be a big one.
Well, aside from data governance issues, the availability of data, the two major problems are going to be workflow and then also model selection. So a lot of people don't know the actual workflow within artificial intelligence and machine learning. It is not agile, although agile can be incorporated, but it's basically something called CRISP DM, CRISP DM, which is the cross-industry standard. Been around for 25, 30 years, originally within the data mining sector, within data science. And that's really just starting with the business. What does the business want? How does it make money? How does it minimize its costs? Things of that sort. And then the next step would be data understanding. What type of data do you have? So workflow and also feature engineering are the big impediments within predictive analytics. And a lot of people also just simply assume to take the data as it is and not do any modifications with the data. For example, put a particular data array into percentage format or actually do calculations. The best predictive models, even ones who won Nobel Prizes, let's say in physics or economics or even psychology, are ones where they take the data set, which is raw, and alter it, not change its values, but basically alter its expression in different forms or do calculations. And that tends to be something that's very much missed within predictive analytics. There's also, within the modeling phase, unfortunately, a lot of people, when they go to school, they're very obsessed about a particular model here and there. Maybe they have a physics background and they're implementing a model and they like the elegance of the math of a particular model, or they have this shiny object syndrome. That tends to be an impediment also, when in truth, the correct way of doing this is to go through a series of models and then validate which one is the most accurate and pick that model. So instead of having a predetermined interest in a particular model, you remove that predetermination and you simply focus on the accuracy of whether or not the data fits into the model and is able to actually do predictive analytics correctly. In my 20 years, I can tell you that the models that tend to be the simplest are the ones that usually work the best rather than the ones that are most complicated. That tends to be the case for my 20 years.
So let's talk again about how we help people get that first step. So Fortune 500 companies, I doubt very seriously they have any challenges in what you're talking. Fortune 1000. Okay.
Yeah.
When we get to that mid-market, those challenger type companies, how do they engage in an agnostic initiative for this? I had to think about very clearly how I wanted to position that, which is that there's not a technology end in mind. They haven't already, whomever they're counseling with doesn't already have a solution, right? AWS is not going to tell you Azure is the best. In this particular, they're just not going to do that. Neither will Google, et cetera. So how does a marketer, a chief sales officer, or CEO engage with somebody who is agnostic but understands enough of scope that they can help guide them down prioritizing their decision tree?
Well, first and foremost, understand the business, and I mean thoroughly. How does it make money? How can it actually lose money? Second is to understand the data. How's the data has evolved over the years, and has there been any mergers and acquisitions? Have there been any changes within the data lakes or databases that exist over the years? That's very important. And then focusing on next, the third step is really preparing the data for machine learning and for predictive analytics. And that's critically basically just feature engineering. Like, which features do you think, based on your domain knowledge within the company? And I know this could be kind of difficult. It does introduce bias. A little story I like to tell is, it's probably difficult to read the letters in the bottle when you're inside the bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So that type of bias is very much exists. So it's important to have a diverse group. When I mean diverse, I mean people who have different backgrounds, people who are relatively new at the company versus people who have been around for quite some time, to work within a team to kind of come up with a predictive analytical model based on some features that really are explainable. In addition, I can kind of add one more thing, and a lot of people do not know this, is that instead of manually selecting these features into this predictive analytics, there is very much ways that have been around for quite a number of years where you can use artificial intelligence that can select the features for you and then assign a level of a percentage of importance to each feature. For example, when I worked at a supermarket or a global insurance firm, everyone thought that whether or not people would buy this is the level of income, which is true. But then I asked them the question, what percentage of that is important? Is it 80% important? Is it 20% important? What's that number? And I gave him that answer, and there were a lot of them were pretty much shocked. In fact, that the income was not a primary role. It was not above 50%. It also meant that maybe the customer is willing to spend more. And that's the really critical key within starting with business understanding, and data preparation with feature engineering.
So let's talk a bit about the business outcomes, right? And so now we're talking about, how do these companies get and gain realization of their investment? And one of the things that the study in McKinsey pointed out as I was reading through it is that 71% of marketing and sales implementations of analytical AI resulted in an increase in revenue, some increase, measurable increase, where 34% focused more on the decrease in cost, right? And so there's these two competing objectives. It'd be beautiful if both could be achieved in an implementation. So I'll ask you, if you were going to prioritize as a leader or advise a leader prioritize decreasing cost in the marketing side or increasing revenues, where would you advise them to focus on and why?
Okay, it's going to vary differently between one company to the next, between one product line to the next, and also in terms of their priority, what is important for them. But first and foremost, to answer that question is to do some competition analysis. Where are they within the industry? What is their market share? What is their history? Have they done cost reductions before or cost minimization processes before? Have they done revenue? So what is their history within cost, maximizing revenue and minimizing costs? And what were the stories of how successful they are or not, and why? So this is rather a matter of first gathering some information before answering that question. And then next is really to focus on particular objectives. I remember working for a particular, a very large law firm who was very interested in maximizing revenue by trying to work with acquiring more clients for a particular geographic area and an industry, when really they really needed to reduce their costs within the paralegals that existed within the industry. And it was overlooked. And this kind of goes back to prior what I said earlier. It is difficult to read the letters in a bottle when you're inside the bottle. And if you've been working at the same place for quite some time, it's difficult to understand it from an external perspective, how to answer that question. For me, it tends to be a maximization of revenue based on my 20 years of experience, more than minimizing costs. That wins most of the time, but not always. I always try to find ways to kick back on that and have a thorough understanding of it. because that's what data science really are trained to do. We are deep dive fact checkers, and we provide solid information for people before they make these decisions, such as to maximize revenue or to minimize cost.
Amazing. Amazing. So let's talk a little bit about it. I mean, and this is significant. We're seeing it at the functional level, but literally at the industry level, right? And so we're out speaking to marketers, marketing leaders who are trying to understand, what decision do I make, and can I benchmark that decision? And the decision is, do I ask for a fully customized or highly customized solution, or do I focus on more of an out of the box and low customization, low code effort, right? Because I'm just looking to integrate AI capabilities, right? Of course, HubSpot's done an amazing job of that, Microsoft Copilot, but it's about a 50-50 split. How do you help an organization and a leader determine whether they need a customized solution, or if it's more of a out of the box solution to fit the needs of the business?
Yeah, so I guess this is the part where I do the quiet parts. I say the quiet parts out loud. Yeah. Yeah, so 19 years ago, I did no-code solutions on a regular basis. There's actually 24 platforms that are out there, and this is a matter of if you haven't been experienced with something, if someone has not told you something, it doesn't mean that it's not there. And no-code solutions very much exist across a variety of platforms. Regardless of your data infrastructure at all, they have a substantial variety of costs, to very low to very high, depending on your current base, your database that exists. And to kind of really answer your question about no-code, it does depend on the current people that exist within an organization. I've been to places where they said no to no-code solutions because they have a robust manual coding army that has been around for quite some time, and it'd be quite disruptive for the company and also the morale. So we've had to say no to that, not because of financial reasons, but it's largely psychological, exists within the company. However, on the opposite end of the scale, I've been with mid-sized companies, particularly with scientific manufacturing, where I help them, where I introduced them to no-code solutions, and they ate it up right away. And they were enthusiastic because they thought they're mid-sized, we needed to hire more manual programmers. I'm like, no, this is how you can actually do it. And you can choose this particular platform. And there are some free ones that are available on the internet, especially in other countries and also industrial sectors. The industrial sector that tends to have more no-code solutions or low-code solutions tends to be healthcare, psychiatry, big pharma. They tend to have the more than average than other industrial sectors with no-code solutions. And I'll add a little bit more to this, in the sense that people are influenced by the marketing of big tech companies such as Google and Microsoft, etc. They have been paying lots of money to boot camps and also the departments of computer science to get everyone to manually code. It's their business. It's very important to them. And it basically has been a huge problem for them to unwind from this years of investment, because no-code solutions have actually been around for quite some time. And because no one knows about the marketing budgets are lower on the no-code solutions, and their influence in social media channels is much smaller, people simply just don't know about them. And that's one of the things that I do, is I introduce people to no-code solutions, that they're reliable, they're easier to put together. And I'll call it end this at the end. There is a very much a viable artificial intelligence products that are available there. It is called explainable AI, which basically allows you to upload data. It selects the model for you. It does the feature engineering for you automatically. Then on top of that, it selects the model and validates for you all within once, with no codes at all. It's just all point and click approach with application on an application. So, to really answer your question, it does vary within the company and what they're able to achieve, whether they want to do no code or not.
Okay, so let's talk implementation,
All
right?
right.
And so now we're talking about some of the benchmarks that we're seeing across industries. And typically it seems like generative AI as an initiative, whether you're going no code, low code, or full customization, that the sweet spot is right in between 1 to 4 months for implementation and use of capabilities. Is that realistic, or is that more because of the off-the-shelf solutions that you're seeing?
Yes, it is realistic. A lot of people don't know this. Machine learning algorithms are pretty old, actually. Their labels may have changed over the years. Linear models came out in the 1960s. It originally came out in the UCLA hospital. Today it's called Cedars-Sinai Hospital in Los Angeles for linear regression and logistic regression for medical studies. And, ensemble models such as random forest came out in the 1990s, along with support vector machines. So this code has been laying around for quite a while. Also, generative artificial intelligence, really, I caught onto it in 2016 from a book that I read that came out in 2014. It's a decade old. It actually has an older history with it, with autoencoders that goes back to the 1960s. So because this coding has been around and available, and it's been also put into countless number of websites, such as Stack Overflow, for example, then if that's the case, then that implementation where somebody's actually implemented this countless times, posting their work and also their information on the internet for free, and because there's no real trade secrets here, that's why you get that 1 to 4 month implementation. With the no-code solutions, it probably should be relatively quicker if you have the expertise of what machine learning is within a particular day. The quickest I've done in terms of work was 2 days for a very large company, once because their data sets were ready, and I was able to implement within the first day and have it deployed the next day into production. That's very much possible. I think if you compare this, let's say, other types of professions that have nothing to do with machine learning, that 1 to 4 month would be a lot longer because the work is not available freely on the internet. The work is relatively new, et cetera, et cetera.
So let's get more domain specific, right? We're coming up on the top of the hour. Let's get to it, right? So the marketers who are tuning in and who will be consuming in the future want to look ahead. How do you see predictive analytics evolving to shape the future of marketing decisions? You've talked a lot internally with myself and others about moving from intuition-based marketing to data-driven marketing and that transformation. So how does that roadmap look in terms of enhancing from data to decision-making and competitive differentiation using machine learning and other core technologies?
I would say basically 3 areas. There's going to be more personalization. There's going to be more real-time based data that does predictive analytics. And then the third area is to kind of take advantage of unstructured data sets, which are essentially websites, user log files, social media files. Those are the 3 areas where the future is going to be within marketing in particular. The personalizations I even say maybe even hyper personalization. It would be a term to use. That simply is going to become exponential. And the unstructured data sets is going to be particularly a small set of companies who can actually take things that are overlooked, such as these user log files and social media files and websites, behavior and analytics, and to actually take that data, put into, let's say, a graph or a database, or flatten it to a database, find features, and to be able to use that for predictive analytics. Not everybody can actually do that. To transform those unexpected data sets into something that's meaningful. So it's going to be a small set of companies. That would be it within recommendations, more real-time database, predictive analytics, and then taking advantage of unstructured data.
Awesome. And what I mean by awesome is that the opportunities are immense. One of the things I love most about marketing. I go back to my fascination with marketing is the moment I realized what product marketing was and the difference between the two. It was that I noticed that when it came to luxury vehicles, especially the higher end of luxury vehicles, so think Mercedes S-Class, LS, Lexus, those type BMW 7. there was always a person in the commercial that was in their 50s, maybe closer to 60s, but you could tell that they were executive level. They had 20, 30 years of experience, always had that silver watch on, and they're on their way to either a business event or they're driving up the coast, kind of connotating, hey, I have some economic viability.
Yeah.
And then I noticed Apple never had a never silver, no silver watches. It was always creative people having a lot of fun. And that was the first time that I realized that marketing as a science and art is really based on the human that you're trying to connect with. And now that we have these explosive technologies that can help us refine and define that within milliseconds, sentiment analysis, for example, how does a chief marketing officer reach out to somebody or find somebody like you who can help them understand the options that are being presented? Because sometimes it's just, hey, I need somebody else who's independent of this organization that says they're the best thing since sliced bread. So how do you work with your business leaders like a chief marketing officer or CEO?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you enter a zoo, there's so many animals, you don't know which one's your favorite one. And there's so many machine learning algorithms, and there's so much data, and maybe there's so many marketing campaigns you can influence. So to put it kind of bluntly, let me use this statement to kind of describe your question. You kind of drowning in information, but starving for knowledge. And to kind of get to where that chief marketing officer's ask is, that'd be my description. Now, you gave the example of sentiment analysis with natural language processing. Now, I think that you can do various techniques with a chief marketing officer to kind of understand their customer at a much deeper level, using sentiment analysis, basically extracting the emotion that people get within a particular product or services, categorizing that through different personas and different predictive behavior based on the analysis. So, for example, if you have an existing product line that's been out there, it has decent revenue, it's selling, but you kind of notice that the revenue, the sales numbers starts to flatten, if not in some cases go down, in particular in certain demographics. If that's the case, then you want to use sentiment analysis to see why people are not as have that emotional appeal to the product. Are they bored? Are they buying something else? These are really important questions. So for a chief marketing officer who is kind of drowning in information and starving for knowledge, data analysis, unsupervised learning, and then machine learning algorithms to kind of extract information about your customer to learn how you can actually identify the current problem and then go forward with a predictive analytical solution or for a new product.
What does that process look like? So the chief marketing officer realizes I need an AI expert, but not one who's trying to sell me a product. How does that process work? How have entrepreneurs, CEOs, again, the big revenue driving functions of the company, how do those functional leaders find you? And what does that engagement look like?
That engagement involves a discussion about the data sets that are available and what type of information we extract from it. Whenever you're a data scientist or an artificial intelligence lead or instructor or engineer or running a particular team, you want to deal with the subject matter experts and people, the domain knowledge experts that exist within the business. This is what I read from the data. How do you interpret? Listen to their storytelling about the data. So step one is the storytelling with data. They've been there. They've had the experience. Data is digital information about their business. What does that information tell about where they are, why they were able to generate revenue or not generate revenue, and what type of issues with product launches that were successful or ones who were failures? You can extract that information. And originally, decades ago, statisticians did this as well in the 1980s and also 1970s with these very large companies with planes and trains and automobiles, for example, who were able to take this information and learn about their average customers and use that information to extract even more data. So when we try to go on to the next step, aside from understanding the current phase and listening to the intuition that exists with the traditional methods, and that is to actually do a data deep dive and then potentially ask for additional data, such as from vendors or from older database that are archived internally to actually extract more information that matches the story that that subject matter expert has actually provided. So this is really a describe approach. It can be time consuming depending on the quantity of data, the size of the company. It can range anywhere from as little as 1 month and as much as an entire year. I've been in places where the organization is so large that it does take as long as that much because of the large quantity of subsidiaries that exists. That's completely normal. But that is the first particular phases within a chief marketing officer. After that, the third step and the most important step is to try to identify a quick win. You know, if you're obtaining information that really hasn't been dug up before, is there something missing within the business, a pain point you could address, or an opportunity that exists for, let's say, a potential new product, or to sell a product to a customer segment that normally has not been sold to or know little about. So there's a lot that you can do within those three phases for a chief marketing officer.
Perfect. So as we land this first episode in our expert series, I always want to give you an opportunity to talk a bit about your dream. You're building the Global Institute of Data Science. It seems to be a culmination of a lifelong passion. So talk to a little bit as we close this off about what you're wanting to achieve at the foundation or the institute, excuse me, and whom you're looking to join as part of your mission.
Yeah, we're trying to develop a global community within machine learning enthusiasts, people who are, whether they're technical or not technical, from country to country, to share our experiences within machine learning and artificial intelligence, to get ourselves out of our data silos or even our own particular countries. We are gaining some ground with a particular set of countries, 4 in total as of this month, who are going to join our networks relatively soon, where they're able to share their experiences with machine learning. Because one thing I've learned, because I grew up overseas and I also worked for different companies overseas as well, such as Canada, the UK, and France, and I also worked for a lot of clients in other countries here in the US, is that people's different perspectives that exist. And I think that if we had a platform such as the Global Institute of Data Science, we can share our stories and really learn from each other. One of the most exciting things that people learn about, particularly here in the US, is there's basically 2 countries who've been doing no-code solutions for probably about 20 years, and people have never really heard about it. And when I share that story with people in the US, they're quite shocked. And that's one of our objectives within the Global Institute of Data Science, is to share these stories within the global community of machine learning enthusiasts.
So let's close it off. I'm a CEO, right? And I've got a CMO that's really, really sharp. How and when do they say, I need an expert like John?
When they want to leverage their current data to find new marketing channels or marketing campaign for more customers to maximize their revenue, or, and more importantly, to kind of get in within machine learning and artificial intelligence, because the competitors are probably getting into it. In addition, I'm assuming that their data is governed and curated and ready. If not, there's actually ways we can use AI to do that. But to kind of join this really revolution from traditional intuition-based marketing, getting into a more data-driven approach, it will actually help your traditional approaches and verify your intuition you have about your customers or your products or your competitors' products, and from a very scientific perspective. So nothing feels better than being validated as a chief marketing officer of all the years of experience you've had in every place that you've been, that instead of telling just stories from one person to the next, you now have a scientific process that actually validates your belief system, which encourages you to build more products, have different marketing campaigns for your existing products, and much more.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much for taking an hour out of your day. I know you're busy in Silicon Valley. You're headed to another country. There's a lot of things going on your side. So we appreciate you taking the time. But for those who have attended and those who will be consuming in the future, this is one of several introductions into the cross-functional leveraging of analytics capabilities. Predictive, we're going to get into descriptive, and then predictive analytics. So stay tuned for more for John. John, thank you so very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.